Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
This happened back when my dad was still serving in the military, about 15 years ago. He was a staff sergeant then, responsible for managing a squad of about 20 soldiers at Fort Hood in Texas. It was his first time leading a group this size, and he took the responsibility seriously. Among his soldiers was this young woman who had some pretty obvious mental health issues. My dad never got the full details, but from what he observed, she seemed to have severe anxiety and trust issues that made military life really difficult for her. She'd been in the service for about 8 months, but it was clear she was struggling. The paperwork was already being processed for her medical discharge, which would happen in about 2 months. Despite her issues, or maybe because of them, she was incredibly kind and trusting once someone showed her basic decency. That's where this other soldier comes in. Let's call him the jerk because that's what he was. This guy was about 23, had been in the service for 3 years, and had a reputation for being smooth with his words. He wasn't good at his job, but he knew how to charm people when he wanted something. The jerk started paying attention to her right after he found out about her upcoming discharge. He'd sit with her at meals, ask about her day, and act like he cared. My dad noticed this but didn't think much of it at first. Soldiers looking out for each other wasn't unusual, but then the jerk started asking her for small favors. First, it was borrowing $5 for lunch. Then it was asking her to cover his shift so he could go on a date. She said yes to everything because she was so grateful someone was being nice to her. My dad started getting suspicious when he overheard the jerk talking to his buddies about how easy it was to get things from her. The situation got worse when the jerk convinced her to let him borrow her car for what he said was a family emergency. His own car was supposedly in the shop, and he needed to drive 2 hours to see his sick grandmother. She handed over the keys without question. The jerk told her he really appreciated this and that his grandmother meant everything to him. She said she understood and that family comes first. Then he mentioned that since he was driving that far, he could use some cash for gas and would pay her back when he returned. When she asked how much he needed, he said maybe $60. He offered to hit the ATM for her if she gave him her card and PIN so she wouldn't have to walk all the way over there. That's where she made her biggest mistake. She trusted him. She gave him her ATM card and PIN, thinking he'd just withdraw $60 and bring her the rest of her money back, along with her car. 3 days passed. No jerk, no car, no word from him. My dad started making calls and discovered the guy had gone AWOL. When they tracked down the car, it was abandoned in a parking lot about 4 hours away. They ran a check on her bank account and found it empty. He'd taken everything, over $3,000 that she'd been saving for months to help her transition back to civilian life. The girl was devastated. She came to my dad's office in tears, saying she didn't know what to do and that the money was supposed to help her find an apartment and get back on her feet. My dad promised her they would find the guy and make things right. She worried about what would happen if they couldn't find him, and my dad told her that the jerk was still in the system and couldn't hide forever. It took 2 weeks, but they found the jerk. Military police picked him up at his cousin's house 3 states away. They brought him back to base and straight to my dad's office for questioning. This is where things got frustrating for my dad. The jerk had committed theft, but because it was a military member stealing from another military member, the civilian police couldn't just arrest him. The military had to handle it through their own legal system. But because the theft happened off base and involved civilian banking systems, there were complications with jurisdiction. The legal office told my dad they were processing a Chapter 10 discharge, which could take weeks or even months. During this time, the jerk would remain on base but couldn't be sent to the stockade without a formal conviction or court-martial proceeding. So there the jerk sat in my dad's office, completely unrepentant. When my dad asked if he had anything to say about what he did to her, the jerk said he didn't force her to give him anything and that she handed over her car and ATM card voluntarily. My dad pointed out that he stole from a fellow soldier who trusted him. The jerk insisted he didn't steal anything since she gave him access. and said it wasn't his fault she was stupid enough to trust people so easily. My dad mentioned that she was getting medically discharged because of her mental health issues and that the jerk had taken advantage of that. The jerk just shrugged and said that was her problem, not his, and that she should have been smarter about who she trusts. My dad was furious but had to stay professional. He dismissed the jerk for the day while he figured out what to do. That's when he started digging through military regulations, looking for any way to make this guy's life miserable within the bounds of the law. He found something interesting. There was a regulation that allowed commanding officers to assign soldiers to special duties when needed, long as basic needs were met. My dad got creative. The next morning, he called the jerk back to his office. He told him that since he was waiting for his discharge processing and seemed to have time on his hands, he had a special assignment for him. When the jerk asked what kind of assignment, my dad explained it was paint maintenance. He said there was a storage room in Building C that needed someone to monitor the paint condition, and the jerk's job would be to sit in that room and make sure the paint doesn't peel. The jerk asked what he meant by making sure it doesn't peel. My dad told him exactly what he said. He would sit there and watch the walls, and if he saw any paint starting to peel, he would report it immediately. The jerk protested that it wasn't a real job, but my dad told him that it was now. He would be there from 4 in the morning to midnight every day, with breaks only for meals and bathroom visits. The jerk realized he was being punished, but there wasn't anything he could do about it. My dad had checked with a legal office, and long he provided adequate food, bathroom breaks, and 4 hours of sleep. He could assign whatever duties he wanted. So off the jerk went to his new job. The room was about 6 feet by 8 feet with a single chair and bare white walls. No windows, no reading material, no clock. Just him and the paint. My dad made sure to check on him regularly, partly to ensure he was following orders, and partly because he was enjoying the guy's misery. He would ask how the paint was looking, and the jerk would complain that it was ridiculous and that my dad couldn't make him sit there staring at walls. My dad would remind him that he could and he was, then ask if there were any signs of peeling. The jerk would say no, there was no peeling and there was never any peeling. My dad would tell him good and to keep watching. After about a week, my dad decided to have some fun with the situation. He walked into the room carrying a newspaper and told the jerk that he was feeling generous and thought he'd let him read the day's papers since he'd been working hard. The jerk's face lit up. He'd been going slowly crazy with nothing to do but stare at walls. He thanked my dad and said he hadn't heard any news in days. My dad handed him the paper, and the jerk eagerly started reading the front page. After about 10 seconds, my dad snatched it back. The jerk asked what was happening and why my dad changed his mind. My dad told him he was stupid and couldn't believe the jerk had trusted him. Then he walked out, leaving the jerk staring at the walls again. This went on for 3 weeks. The jerk tried complaining to other officers, but my dad's creative punishment was technically within regulations. He tried calling a lawyer, begging to be sent to the stockade instead. He pleaded with his attorney that there had to be something he could do and said he'd take filling sandbags in the heat over this. His attorney said he was looking into it, but that the commanding officer wasn't breaking any rules, so he just had to wait for the discharge paperwork to go through. The jerk called it torture, and his attorney admitted it was creative. After a month of paint watching, the discharge paperwork came through. My dad's second in command, a sergeant first class who'd been watching this whole situation with amusement, got the job of escorting the jerk off base. What the jerk didn't know was that the civilian police had gotten their warrant sorted out. They'd been waiting for him to be discharged so they could arrest him without dealing with military jurisdiction issues. When they drove toward the main gate, the jerk was feeling pretty good about himself. He told the second in command that he couldn't wait to get out of this place and that my dad was a real piece of work. The second in command said my dad was thorough. The jerk said that once he was out that gate, he was going to tell them exactly what he thought about all of them. The second in command reminded him that he was free to say whatever he wanted once he was discharged. The jerk said he would, and to trust him on that. They pulled up to the gate and the second in command processed the final paperwork. He told the jerk that he was officially discharged and no longer military property. The jerk started to say that he could tell them what he really thought about the whole situation, but the second in command interrupted him and told him to hold that thought. Then he called out to some gentlemen that this was their man. Two civilian police officers who'd been waiting just outside the gate immediately stepped forward and put the jerk in handcuffs. They told him he was under arrest for grand theft and fraud. The jerk went from smug to terrified in about 2 seconds. He protested that this was military business, but the police officer reminded him that not anymore, he was a civilian now. The second in command leaned down to the jerk's window when they put him in the police car and told him to have a nice day. Then he stood there laughing when they drove the jerk away to county jail, where he served 18 months and had to pay full restitution to the girl he'd stolen from. My dad always said it was one of his favorite moments in his military career. 6 months ago, my life changed forever. I'd been battling diabetes for years, and despite my best efforts to manage it, the disease took its toll. The doctors had to amputate both my legs from the knees down. Going from walking around normally to being confined to a wheelchair was the hardest thing I'd ever faced. Some days I felt angry at the world, other days I just felt defeated. But I was slowly learning to adapt. The other thing you should know is that I've been carrying a firearm for protection for many years now. I'm a responsible gun owner who goes to the shooting range regularly. Over the years, I've gotten to know quite a few police officers there. We'd chat about techniques, share stories, and they became good friends of mine. When I lost my legs, one of my buddies made me a special holster that looks like it holds a cell phone and a small tablet. It attaches to the side of my wheelchair, keeping my firearm secure but accessible if I ever need it. So there I was at Walmart the other day with my son. I hate that place more than anything, but sometimes you just need to go there for certain things. My son had wandered off with a shopping cart to grab some items we needed while I waited in the main aisle. That's when this large woman approached me. She didn't say hello or excuse me, she just walked right up and rudely demanded that I give her my wheelchair. I looked at her like she was crazy and told her no. She then insisted that she needed it more than I did. I looked her straight in the eye and told her I didn't care what she wanted because I had no legs. I started wheeling away from her. About 5 minutes later, I heard screaming from across the store. This same woman was walking toward me, pointing and yelling that I had stolen her wheelchair. People were starting to stare. I felt my face getting hot with embarrassment and anger. I told her to leave me alone because the chair wasn't hers. What happened next still shocks me. When I started to wheel away from her again, she came up behind me and pushed me right off my wheelchair. I hit the floor hard, and she climbed into my chair and tried to take off with it. The whole store erupted into chaos. Management came running from every direction. My son, who's very protective of me since the amputation, came flying through the aisles when he heard the commotion. Several customers rushed over to help me up, asking if I was okay. Someone had already called the police. When the officers arrived, I recognized them immediately. It was two cops I knew well from the shooting range. Let's call them Jack and Maria. When they saw me lying on the floor, the shock on their faces was obvious. They knew me as someone who was always standing around chatting at the range, not someone in a wheelchair. Jack asked what had happened, and I told them the whole story about how the woman demanded my wheelchair, how I refused, and how she pushed me out of it and tried to steal it. It didn't take long for store security to catch the woman. She'd tried to wheel out through the main entrance but got stopped. When they brought her back to where I was, she was still screaming and demanding that I be arrested for stealing her wheelchair. Jack and Maria were clearly trying to hold back laughter. They could see how ridiculous this whole situation was. The woman was claiming my custom wheelchair was hers. That's when Maria, who's one of the sweetest and kindest people you'll ever meet, noticed my holster attached to the side of the chair. She looked at the woman, then back at Jack. I could see that look that passed between them. They had an idea. Maria asked the woman what was attached to the side of the chair. The woman claimed it was her phone and coupons. Maria then asked if she could show them what was inside. The woman refused, saying she didn't have to show them anything. Maria explained that if the wheelchair belonged to her, then she should be able to show them the contents. The woman hesitated for a moment, probably realizing she was trapped, but her arrogance got the better of her and she agreed to show them. She reached over and opened the holster. The moment she saw what was inside, her eyes got wider than I've ever seen anyone's eyes get. Her face went completely white. Jack looked at her with the most serious expression I'd ever seen on him and told her she was under arrest for assault and felony theft of a firearm. That's when she completely lost it. When Jack and Maria put the handcuffs on her, she started kicking and screaming like a 2-year-old having a tantrum. She kept insisting it wasn't fair and that I had stolen her chair, demanding they couldn't arrest her. But it was too late. Not only had she assaulted me and tried to steal my wheelchair, but by claiming ownership of the chair, she'd also inadvertently claimed ownership of the firearm in the holster. That turned her petty theft into a serious felony. My son helped me back into my wheelchair while Jack and Maria finished their paperwork. Several customers came up to check on me and tell me they'd witnessed everything. The store manager apologized profusely and said they'd review their security footage. When they led Karen away, still screaming and protesting, Maria came back over to me and asked if I was okay and needed medical attention. I told her I was fine, just shaken up, and thanked her for handling the situation so well. Jack said they'd need me to come down to the station later to file a formal report, and I agreed to be there. When I watched them drive away with Karen in the back of the police car, I felt a mix of emotions. I was angry that someone would treat another person that way, especially someone with a disability. But I was also grateful for the friends I'd made at the shooting range who knew me well enough to handle the situation properly. Being in a wheelchair is hard enough without people trying to take advantage of you. Some people stare, others make comments, and apparently some people think they can just take what you need to get around. It's not easy adjusting to life like this, but at least I know there are good people out there who'll stand up for what's right. I found out later that Karen was charged with assault, attempted theft, and unlawful possession of a firearm. She also got banned from every Walmart in the area. I adopted my golden retriever 3 years ago from a local shelter after my divorce. He was this scraggly, nervous mess when I first got him, but with some patience and love, he became the most gentle, friendly dog you could imagine. He's literally my best friend and has helped me through some really dark times. The neighborhood is pretty typical, mostly families and older folks who keep to themselves. There's this one guy who lives a few houses down who I've always found odd. He's probably in his 60s, lives alone, and rarely comes outside. In all my years here, I think we've maybe exchanged 2 brief conversations, and both times he seemed irritated that I even acknowledged him. The other neighbors have mentioned he's always been antisocial, but I figured everyone deserves their privacy. Yesterday started like any other day. It was beautiful outside, and my dog was practically bouncing off the walls with excitement for his walk. We have this routine where we go around the block every morning around 9. He knows the route by heart and has his favorite spots where he likes to sniff around. When we were walking past the neighbor's house, I noticed he was actually outside for once, doing something in his front yard. My dog, being the social butterfly he is, started wagging his tail and took a few steps toward him. Not aggressively or anything, just his usual friendly approach that every other neighbor has always loved. That's when everything went wrong. Without any warning, this guy just hauled back and kicked my dog hard right in the ribs. The sound my poor dog made will haunt me forever. He yelped and stumbled backward, clearly in pain and completely confused about what just happened. I shouted at him, demanding to know what he was doing. I was stunned. Who kicks a friendly dog? The neighbor didn't even look ashamed. Instead, he started going off about how dogs are disgusting animals that don't belong in civilized neighborhoods. He was saying all this horrible stuff about how pet owners are irresponsible and how animals should be kept locked up. I was trying to stay calm and check on my dog, who was cowering behind my legs, when this maniac reached into his jacket and pulled out a gun, an actual handgun, and he pointed it directly at my dog. I screamed at him to put the gun down and asked if he was completely crazy. My heart was pounding, but there was no way I was letting him hurt my best friend. The neighbors started ranting about how this filthy beast had been polluting our neighborhood long enough and that someone needed to do something about it. This was over my dog being friendly. I didn't even think I just stepped between him and my dog. I told him he would have to go through me first if he wanted to hurt my dog. The whole situation was surreal. Here's this guy I barely know threatening to shoot my dog over absolutely nothing. My dog hadn't done anything wrong, he hadn't even touched this lunatic. Thankfully, the commotion attracted attention. The lady who lives across the street came out of her house and immediately started screaming when she saw the gun. She yelled for someone to call the police because he had a gun. Within minutes, there were sirens everywhere. The police showed up faster than I've ever seen them respond to anything. Multiple officers jumped out with their weapons drawn. The police officers shouted at him to drop the weapon and put his hands where they could see them. For a moment, I thought this guy might actually try to shoot it out with the cops. He had this wild look in his eyes like he was completely disconnected from reality, but after what felt like forever, he finally dropped the gun and got on the ground. The whole thing probably lasted less than 10 minutes, but it felt like hours. The officers were incredibly professional. They secured the scene, took statements from me and the witnesses, and made sure my dog and I were okay. One of the officers told me that my neighbor was being charged with animal cruelty, assault with a deadly weapon, and several other charges. Apparently, when they searched his house, they found several more firearms that weren't properly registered. It turns out this guy had been reported before for threatening other neighbors, but nothing had ever come of it. I immediately took my dog to the emergency vet. The kick had bruised his ribs pretty badly, but thankfully nothing was broken. The vet gave him some pain medication and told me to watch him closely for the next few days. Even after everything that happened, my dog was still trying to be friendly to everyone at the vet's office. That's just who he is. The next day, I got a call from a detective who told me that my neighbor had a history of mental health issues and had been off his medication for months. His family had apparently been trying to get him help, but he kept refusing. The detective said my case, combined with the weapons violations, would likely result in him getting the help he needs, whether he wants it or not. I found out later from other neighbors that this guy had been making threatening comments about pets in the neighborhood for weeks. One family stopped walking their cat because he had yelled at them about it. Another neighbor said he had complained to the homeowners association about animal noise, even though our neighborhood is pretty quiet. It's been a week now, and I'm still processing everything. I keep thinking about how different this could have ended. If I hadn't been there, if the neighbors hadn't come out, if the police hadn't arrived so quickly, I don't want to think about it. My dog is doing much better now. He's back to his normal happy self, though I've noticed he gets a little nervous when we walk past that house. The neighbor's family came by to apologize and let me know he's been committed for psychiatric evaluation. They're also paying for all the vet bills. Taking my dog for a regular walk turned into something like this. It really makes you realize how quickly a normal day can become a nightmare. I'm just grateful that my dog is okay and that this guy is getting the help he clearly needs before he hurts someone else. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.